To put it bluntly, I am back.
On Saturday at Queensbridge Park in New York, Bernie Sanders drew the largest crowd of any 2020 candidate in this race this entire campaign season. And really, it's not even close. So I'll give you the number in a second here, but this is the massive crowd. There were even people on the bridge that were watching. And this crowd actually was so big that it actually went over what their permit allowed. So there were several thousand others watching from just outside the park, as you can see here. Now, Ruby Kramer of BuzzFeed News tweeted this out. Bernie Sanders has a crowd of 25,872 this afternoon at his Queens rally, according to the security company handling the event, Contemporary Services. That would make this event, his first since his heart attack 18 days ago, the largest crowd drawn by any candidate. So this was a rally that not only signified that Bernie is indeed back, but it also showcased a couple of very key endorsements. Michael Moore and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, two people who just recently endorsed Bernie Sanders. So I'm going to have several clips to show you here. This first set of clips, I'm going to show you a bit of what Michael Moore said and a bit of what Nina Turner, who has been a fantastic surrogate for Bernie Sanders, also a bit of what Nina said as well.
He holds a record in the United States Congress. No independent in the history of the United States of America has served more terms in the United States Congress. I remember asking Bernie back then, what exactly is a democratic socialist? And he said, well, it's very simple. It's what the Democratic Party used to be. It's what Franklin Roosevelt did. He said to me, what it means, Mike, is that everyone gets a seat at the table. And everyone gets a slice of the pie. Not just one person taking 9 slices and letting everybody else fight for the crumbs of the last slice. He said it means that we need not just democracy in our electoral politics, we need a democratic economy, an economy that you and I control. That's what it means. Focus on the democratic part of democratic socialism.
We got a lot of copies. There's only one candidate in 2016 who told the multi-millionaires and billionaires in this country, keep your money, I'll raise my money with the people. There's only one candidate who's been marching with the working class people, not because he's running for president, but because it's right. Hello, Marriott workers. Hello, Amazon workers. Hello, Verizon workers. Hello, teachers. Come on, somebody. And I don't know about you, but I hail from a tradition that says that you will know the tree by the fruit that it bears, and Senator Bernie Sanders bears good fruit. So there are many copies. People want to talk about a framework. People who stand up in other folks' living rooms and say to them, multi-millionaires and billionaires, that nothing will fundamentally change for you. Well, Queens, I got a message. If nothing fundamentally changes for multi-millionaires and billionaires, then nothing fundamentally changes for you and you and you and you.
All right, so much greatness there. It's impossible to recap all that. You saw what they said. Michael Moore, so he actually endorsed Bernie Sanders in, I believe, 1990. So the first time Bernie ran for Congress, Michael Moore endorsed him. So they've actually known each other for a while. And also keep in mind, Michael Moore predicted, one of the few people allowed on television that predicted that Trump would defeat Hillary in 2016. Because Michael Moore understands what you need to do as a candidate to actually reach out to those Rust Belt voters. When he endorses now Bernie Sanders. I mean, it should tell you, Michael Moore understands the pulse of the country. He understands where people are going. He understands what kind of candidate is required to defeat Donald Trump. So his endorsement means a lot. And Nina Turner here, always fantastic. Nina, I mean, she's my first choice for VP. She calls out Warren and Biden here, not directly, but she talks about the framework, Medicare for All framework. That's going after what Warren had said about that, how, we don't have the details yet on Medicare for All, but there's a framework. No, the details are there. There are a couple bills, one in the House, one in the Senate. The details are there. There's no framework. So just showing you once again, can you really trust Warren to fight for Medicare for All? I don't think she's shown that. And also going after Biden, how Biden, told his wealthy donors that nothing will fundamentally change for them. And if nothing changes for them, then nothing changes for everybody else in the country. Now, I also just want to give a quick shout out to Tiffany Caban. She was also there. She is a public defender, ran for DA in Queens. She ultimately lost, but she was really robbed of it. I don't want to get into that whole discussion about what happened in that race. But she was there as well, and she opened for AOC. So I'm going to show you AOC in a second here. But what I found really interesting about this event, or this part of the event, is that you have AOC, as you're going to see, talk about how she was inspired by Bernie Sanders, and Caban actually talked about how she was inspired by AOC. So there's sort of this like domino effect where you have somebody like Bernie Sanders speak to a message that ignites people, and then you get people on board like AOC who then get involved in the political process, becomes a congressperson, and then inspires other people like Tiffany Caban in Queens to run. So this movement, understand, it's bigger than Bernie, and I think most Bernie supporters also understand that. Bernie is he is the president that will actually listen to this movement when he is in the White House. But the movement is what is required to actually get any of this done. And Bernie says that himself. It's not about him. It's about us. It's about working together, working from inside and outside of Washington to get the kinds of bills that people want passed, like Medicare for All. Now let me get to AOC here. So AOC, of course, just recently endorsed Bernie Sanders and has a lot of awesome things to say here.
Last February, I was working as a waitress in downtown Manhattan at a taqueria. I worked shoulder to shoulder with undocumented workers who often worked harder and hardest for the least amount of money. I was on my feet working 12-hour days with no structured breaks. I didn't have health care. I wasn't being paid a living wage. And I didn't think that I deserved any of those things. Because that is the script that we tell working people here and all over this country. That your inherent worth and value as a human being is dependent on an income that another person decided to underpay us. But what we're here to do is to turn around that very basic logic. It wasn't until I heard of a man by the name of Bernie Sanders that I began to question and assert and recognize my inherent value as a human being that deserves health care, housing, education, and a living wage. When I was a waitress and when it was time for me to graduate college with student debt, Bernie Sanders was one of the only ones that said no person should be graduating with life-crushing debt at the start of their lives. Bernie Sanders did not do these things because they were popular. And that's what we need to remember. He did this, and he fought for these aims and these ends when they came at the highest political cost in America. No one wanted to question this system. And in 2016, he fundamentally changed politics in America.
So, obviously, it's hard to distill these speeches down to a couple minutes, but AOC's speech is fantastic. And she mentions several great things here, but what I want to really focus on is how Bernie is a leader. Like, when you're talking about Bernie compared to any other candidate, and, you know, comparing Bernie and Warren, Bernie has taken the position on issues before they were popular. So, you know, back in the 60s, fighting against housing discrimination, getting arrested over it. In the 70s and the 80s, supporting gay rights and holding one of the first gay pride parades in the country in Vermont when he was mayor. And of course, his lifelong fight discussing income inequality, wealth inequality, the military-industrial complex. I mean, go on and on and on. Bernie has been to the front of these issues. He's led on these issues. And we don't hold most people to this standard, and we probably shouldn't, because it's an impossible standard. Most people don't have the correct positions and don't fight for them, you know, in their 20s and, you know, start life with the correct positions. But when you have someone like that, you have to understand they are a leader. And you have to recognize that. These are the kinds of people. Bernie Sanders is the kind of person that you want to lead the country because he has shown leadership. He's been first to these issues before they were popular. That shows strength. That shows judgment. It shows awareness. Nobody else in the field has that. That is a true leader. And that is what is inspiring about him. Well, I mean, one of the many things that are inspiring about him. He is, you know, on top of being a leader, he has never really seeked the spotlight. He's never done this for ego. Many people, their first introduction to Bernie Sanders was 2015, 2016. And that was deep into his career. And it's not because he didn't do anything. I have a previous video showing a Republican congressperson, a former Republican congressman, discussing how he worked with Bernie. Bernie was fantastic to work with. And in some cases, Bernie would take his name off of bills so that they would pass a Republican House. So he would write a bill to help people, help veterans, I think in one case, took his name off the bill because he thought, well, it's a Republican House, I'm not going to get it passed. But if I take my name off this and give it to you, well, you can get this passed. Because Bernie cares about people. That's why he is doing this. Nobody else in the field is like that. Let me go now to Bernie Sanders. Again, it's impossible to distill his entire speech down to several clips, but I'm going to try. So the clip I really focus on here is how he ends the speech, because this is a kind of a new part or a new aspect of what he said or what he's saying. And it's one that I think perfectly encapsulates what this campaign is about.
To put it bluntly, I am back. Things are going to change, and we're going to have a government of working people, not the 1%. I want you all to take a look around and find someone you don't know. Maybe somebody who doesn't look kind of like you. Maybe somebody who might be of a different religion than you. Maybe they come from a different country. My question now to you is, are you willing to fight for that person who you don't even know as much as you're willing to fight for yourself? Are you willing to stand together and fight for those people who are struggling economically in this country? Are you willing to fight for young people drowning in student debt, even if you are not? Are you willing to fight to ensure that every American has health care as a human right, even if you have good health care. Are you willing to fight for frightened immigrant neighbors, even if you are native born? Are you willing to fight for a future for generations of people who have not yet even been born, but are entitled to live on a planet that is healthy and habitable? Because if you are willing to do that, if you are willing to love, if you are willing to fight for a government of compassion and justice and decency, if you are willing to stand up to Trump's desire to divide us up, if you are prepared to stand up to the greed and corruption of the corporate elite, if you and millions of others are prepared to do that, there is no doubt in my mind that not only will we win this election, but together we will transform this country. Thank you all very much.
So I love that ending. That's what this campaign's about. Are you willing to fight for people, even if you're not going through the same struggles that they are? Even if you don't have student debt, are you willing to fight to cancel student debt? Even if you have great health care, are you willing to fight for Medicare for all? That's what the Bernie Sanders campaign is about. Are you willing to fight for people, regardless of whether you suffer from those issues or not? I mean, it's all about thinking about other people. That's what this is about. And fighting for those people. So there's just no other candidate offering this. There just isn't. Elizabeth Warren is trying in some sense, but she hasn't shown the fight. She didn't put her career on the line to challenge Hillary Clinton in 2016. She just didn't. She hasn't shown a willingness to actually be strong on Medicare for all. Whenever she's questioned about it, I mean, in the debate, she'll say nice things and act like she supports it. And then you question her and her surrogates behind the scenes or afterwards in the press, and they backtrack and act like, oh, well, it's a framework. We'll find the details. It's an eventual long-term goal. We'll eventually get there somehow. There's many ways to get to Medicare for all. No, there are Medicare for all bills. One in the House, one in the Senate. Do you support those? That's what this is. So there is only one fighter in this race, and that's Bernie Sanders, and somebody that has the largest grassroots movement by far, the most individual donors by far, the most volunteers by far, the most individual donations by far, the smallest number of individual donations, averaging $18 a piece. This is a candidate that is fighting for the people and is supported by the people. That's it. Bernie's the choice. End of discussion.